Hey guys, I'm John Setzler. Welcome back to Man Cave Meals. Today, my wife and I took a road trip to an Asian market down on the other side of Charlotte, North Carolina, and I found some pork skin just packaged as pork skin for $1.99 a pound. I bought a couple packages of it, and we're going to turn it into pork rinds, crispy pork rinds. I've done this once before on a Kamado Joe video where I took skin off a Cheshire pork ham, but I learned a few things that I think I can bring forward and make these things really good. So let's get started. I've got two packages of this pork skin here, and you can see it's kind of rolled up in there. The first package here weighs 1.7 pounds, and the other one I've got here weighs 1.9 pounds. So I've got 3 3/4 pound or so of pork skin. So let's pull the plastic off this and have a look. These, I was told, came off of a pork belly, so they look really clean. They've got very little fat left on the inside here, so that looks really good. So what I'm gonna do is we're gonna get started. I'm just gonna trim this stuff down into squares that we can work with, and I'm going to make these squares probably about an inch or so across, and we get these cut down into squares about this size. That's what I'm looking for. And going through this, I've also decided I'm only going to cut down one of these for this batch. I'm going to save the other one for another batch. I've got quite a bit here, so we're going to move on to the next step in this process. Our next step, we're going to simmer these things. I've got about 1 gallon of water in a stock pot here, and I'm going to put about 1/2 cup of my Man Cave Meals AP Mojo in this to season this water. And if you don't have this seasoning, it's basically a typical salt, pepper, and garlic blend. This one's just got some other things in it. And I'm not going to boil these things. I'm just going to dump them in to this solution, and we're just going to simmer it for about an hour. So what I'm going to do is put those skins in there. I'm going to stir them up so they can all get their fair share of this seasoning. And I'm basically just going to keep this just under a boil. And I'm going to put the lid on it as well. I don't want to evaporate that water and concentrate that any more than that. So I'm going to put the lid on and turn the heat down and let that go for an hour. Okay, now that I've let those guys simmer here for an hour, we're going to drain those off. I'm going to let those cool here for just a few minutes, and then I'm going to blot them off with paper towels. So we'll be back after they've had a chance to cool, and I've got to dry them up a little bit. So the next thing I've done is I've put these out here on a baking sheet on a couple of paper towels, and I've taken another couple paper towels and just kind of blotted these things dry. I want to get most of the excess moisture off before we go on to the next step, which is going to be dehydrating. I'm going to put these in my dehydrator, but if you don't have a dehydrator, you're just going to want to put these on a rack, like a cooling rack or some sort of rack that you can put in your oven. Set your oven for somewhere around 180 degrees to 200 degrees, and just leave the oven door cracked and leave it run until these things dry out. They're going to be dry, very hard. I'll show you what these look like when they're done. So let's get these in my dehydrator. Okay, I've got these in my dehydrator, so I'm going to set my dehydrator temp to 160 Fahrenheit, and we're going to set it to run 12 hours. And we'll be back at the end of that run to see what these look like. And after 12 hours in the dehydrator, we've got some really crispy pork rinds here that are ready to go to the next step, which is deep fry. we're ready to move on to the next step here. I've set up my little induction burner outside here, and I've got some oil going here at a little over 350, somewhere between 350 and 375 degrees. And I'm going to take a couple of these and we're going to drop them in and watch what happens. It just takes a very short time for those guys to heat up and start puffing up, and they'll come floating right back to the top here. It takes less than a minute. You can see these guys starting to bubble. There's probably still a little tiny bit of moisture still left in those. And there it comes. The first one's floating back to the top. The second one's floating back to the top. And they will just puff up. I probably could stand to have my oil slightly hotter here, but these look good so far. We'll let these go for just a little bit longer. I tend to not put too many of these in at the same time. I can put more than this in. I could put 4 or 5 of these that are this size in here. Look at that. Those look beautiful. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take these out and toss them in a dish over here where I can let them drain over paper towels. And then we'll just drop a few more of these guys in and let them do their magic. And these guys are ready to come out. I'm just going to take them and dry them off in the same pan. And then we'll drop several more in. And now this batch is ready to come out. Decided to lower these guys down in here with the screen spoon to keep them from splattering on me. So we're gonna watch another batch of these guys come up. It's just really entertaining to watch. These things are delicious, and if you ever get a chance to try this, eat them while they're hot. You know, when these guys come out of the oil, they need to sit for a minute or 2, or maybe 3, and then they're just ready to go. This is one of those treats that there's a little bit of work involved in putting this together, but it's really worth it. These things are really amazing. I've tasted a couple of these as I've been cooking, and the seasoning that I put in the water when we simmered these has added a beautiful flavor to these without having to add any additional seasoning. I added about a half a cup of that seasoning to a gallon of water, and I think next time I do it, I'm going to increase that just a little bit. Probably about 3/4 of a cup is going to make that come out just perfect. So there's your finished product. I've got a nice big batch of pork rinds here, chicharrones, pig skins, whatever you want to call this in your part of the country. These are fantastic. Now, this is only the second time I've done this. I am by far from being an expert on how to do this. This process where I flavored these things by simmering them in the hot water, I don't know if the simmering process is actually a requirement or not. I don't think it is, but it's a great way to put the flavor in there. The dehydration process, I think, is important. Most of the reading I did on how to make these, everybody's dehydrating them first, which helps them do this when you put them in the oil. I have not tried deep frying one that has not been dehydrated, but when I do my next batch, I'll save a couple pieces back and try it and see what happens. But the results I get from doing this are absolutely amazing. So give this a try. Until next time, this is John Setzler with Man Cave Meals.